There were days every month when the money ran out before the next payday, but not once did we go to bed on an empty stomach. Grandma could look in a near-empty fridge and still put dinner on the table like nothing was wrong. There's one thing she made one of those nights that none of us understood back then, not until we were grown, when we realized the meal wasn't made to fill our stomachs.
Pork chops and rice.
It started right after payday, back when things were still good. Grandma would make pork chops and rice. Real pork chops, browned slow in that old cast iron skillet nobody else was allowed to touch. The rice sat underneath, soaking up whatever drippings ran off the pan. Grandpa would come in from work, wash up, and sit down to a plate that looked like any other family's regular dinner. Nothing about it looked like a warning sign. And that was the point. Grandma never let the good nights announce that they were about to run out. Looking back now, that's what makes this meal hard to sit with. Not because anything was wrong with it, because we didn't know it was a good day. We just thought that was dinner. Ham and scalloped potatoes. A day or two after that, Grandma made ham and scalloped potatoes, the kind of meal you'd expect on a Sunday, not some random weekday. She never let it show, but she'd already started making small adjustments. A little less of this, a little more of that, long before anyone else at the table would have noticed. She'd layer the potatoes thin in that same speckled blue baking dish, chipped on one corner for as long as any of us could remember, never once replaced. There was nothing about that dinner that hinted at what was coming. Just a warm kitchen, a full table, and Grandma moving around the stove the same way she always did. Split pea soup. By the third or fourth day, something shifted. We were more interested in what was for dinner than in what was quietly disappearing from the fridge. But Grandma noticed, the way she always noticed first. That's when Grandma made split pea soup. A ham bone, an onion, whatever was still soft in the vegetable drawer, left to simmer most of the afternoon on the back burner. It was the same old pot she always used for soup, the handle wrapped in a strip of fabric because the metal ran too hot to hold bare once it had been sitting on the stove that long. The whole house filled up with that smell, warm and a little sharp. On the surface, it looked like just another dinner, but split pea soup isn't a meal you make when you're starting something new. It's a meal you make when you're already stretching what's there.
Grits and eggs for dinner.
Grits landed on a dinner plate instead of a breakfast one. If you didn't grow up in a house run the way ours was, that might not mean much to you. But it meant the meat was done for the stretch, and what was left had to be simple, filling, and cheap. Grandma never once apologized for a plate like that. She'd set it down the same way she set down the pork chops a few days before, like there was nothing to compare it to. No sighing, no explaining, just dinner. We ate it without thinking twice. It wasn't until years later that we understood how much effort it took to make a plate that plain look that unremarkable. Fried Bologna sandwiches. By the next evening, a slice was fried in the pan till the edges curled. A little French's mustard from a jar that still had plenty left in it. 2 slices of bread pressed down over the top. It was never supposed to be a fancy meal, but there's something about watching someone take the cheapest thing sitting in the fridge and still make it feel like care, like attention, like it mattered that you were fed. That's the part of this story people don't expect going in. Grandma made it look easy. It wasn't. Every sandwich meant deciding how much bologna was left for the rest of the week, and she did that math in her head without ever letting it slow her down. Onion gravy over toast. Some nights there wasn't a main dish at all, just gravy and bread doing the whole job. Onion gravy over toast was one of those nights. A little butter, sliced onions, cooked down slow till they went soft and sweet, a spoon of flour to thicken it, and milk stirred in until it turned the color of weak coffee. poured over toasted bread. It looked like something, even though it was mostly nothing. Grandma would always call it one of Grandpa's favorites when she served it, and for years we believed her without question. It wasn't until we were grown that we understood why she said that about so many of these meals. Not because it was true every time, but because it gave the meal a reason to be on the table that had nothing to do with what was left in the cupboard. She'd stand at the stove stirring that gravy slow, in no hurry at all, like she had all the time in the world instead of a fridge with almost nothing left in it. Looking back, that unhurried way she moved was its own kind of quiet lie. A good one, the kind meant to keep worry out of a kitchen where it would have had every right to be. Rice and gravy. The next night looked almost the same, except there was no toast left, so it was rice and gravy instead. The same gravy, stretched a little further, poured over what was left in the rice pot from a night or two before. Nobody said the word leftover in that house. Food didn't get thrown out, and it didn't get treated like it was less than what it was the first time. It just became something else, quietly, without any announcement. Grandma would scrape that pot clean, every last spoonful accounted for, and set the plates down like she hadn't just stretched one meal into two. We didn't think twice about eating the same rice 2 nights in a row. We just knew it tasted a little different the second time, and none of us ever asked why.
Cracker soup.
By now, the stretch was getting harder to hide, even from us. That was the night Grandma made cracker soup, a stack of premium saltines, the box with the same red and white label that had sat in the pantry for years, broken up and softened in warm milk, a pat of butter melted in, salt and pepper on top. Grandma served it in the good bowls anyway, and none of us thought to ask why the good bowls were out on a random Tuesday. Looking back, that might have been the most telling detail of the whole stretch. She dressed up the smallest meals the most.
Milk toast.
The night after that was milk toast. Bread, warm milk, a little sugar sprinkled over the top if there was any sugar left to spare. She never explained where it came from. She just made it the way it had always been made. Like it was simply what you made when there wasn't much else. It was a soft meal, almost nothing to chew. The kind of thing that went down easy on a night when everyone was a little tired and nobody felt like talking much. We didn't know yet how close we were to the bottom of this stretch, but Grandma did. And there's one meal coming up, not too far from here, that none of us understood back then. Not until we were grown. Sugar sandwiches. This was the floor. 2 slices of bread, a scrape of butter, a spoon of sugar sprinkled over the top and pressed shut. There was no dressing this one up. No good bowls, no story about it being Grandpa's favorite. Just bread and sugar, served plain, on a night when there was genuinely nothing else left to serve. Grandma never made a big deal out of it. She set it down the same steady way she set down everything else, as it belonged there just as much as the pork chops had a week before. We ate it without complaint, because to us, it just tasted like something sweet. It would be years before any of us understood what that plate actually meant. Peach preserves and biscuits. The very next night, Grandma made peach preserves and biscuits. The ball jar she'd put up herself back in the summer, saved in the back of the pantry behind everything else, opened now for no occasion at all except that it was another day that isn't payday yet, but her family needs to be taken care of. This is the meal. The one from the very start of this story, the one none of us understood until we were grown, because it wasn't about being hungry. Grandma opened that jar because we needed something that felt like more than survival, even for one meal.
Chicken and rice casserole.
Things steadied a little after that. Chicken and rice casserole came next. Not a whole chicken, just what could be pulled off the bones from something roasted a few days earlier, stretched out with extra rice and a can of Campbell's cream of mushroom to hold it together. It wasn't a big meal. It wasn't meant to be. But it felt like the first steady ground in a while. The kind of dinner that didn't announce anything, good or bad, just an ordinary weeknight feeling, dropped into the middle of a hard stretch, like Grandma was giving everyone a breath before whatever came next. She let it bake a little longer than it needed, just so the top would go crisp the way we liked it. A small thing, but one more reminder that even on a lean night, she was still paying attention to what made it feel like ours. Fried crackers in bacon drippings. By now, there was almost nothing left to work with, and Grandma made fried crackers and bacon drippings. A stack of saltines, fried in whatever fat was left in the pan from breakfast, until they went soft in the middle and crisp on the edges. It's not really a dish so much as a way of using up the last of something twice. The crackers and the drippings that would have otherwise gone to waste. Grandma never let anything sit in that pan too long before she found a use for it. We didn't know then how close that was to the last of everything. We just knew it tasted salty and rich in a way that made an ordinary cracker feel like it was worth something. Navy bean soup. By now, there was almost nothing left to work with, and Grandma made navy bean soup. A bag of dried beans soaked overnight, simmered most of the next day with an onion, and whatever bit of ham bone was still knocking around in the icebox, until the beans went soft enough to fall apart on their own. It's a slow meal, more time than ingredients. The kind of thing you make when you've got hours to spare, but not much else. Grandma would check the pot now and then, adding a little water when it cooked down too far, stretching one pot of beans into enough to feed everyone twice over if she needed to. We didn't know then how close that was to the last of everything. We just knew the kitchen smelled like it did all day long, and that the bowl was hot enough to make the cold outside feel a little further away. Vinegar pie. 2 nights before payday, Grandma made a pie with no real filling in it, just sugar, butter, and a splash of vinegar, baked until it's set like a custard. Vinegar pie. It tastes closer to a lemon pie than you'd expect if you didn't know what was in it. She made it because there wasn't fruit left for a real pie, and dessert still mattered to her, even on a night that lean. It was one more small way of saying the table hadn't given up, even when the fridge nearly had. She'd let it cool slow on the counter, cutting it into careful, even slices, the same way she would have with a real one. Nobody at that table ever knew what was actually in it until they were old enough to ask. Sunday pot roast. And then payday came. Grandma made a pot roast, a real one, carrots and onions cooked down soft around it, the kind of Sunday dinner that had been missing from the table for over 2 weeks. But the detail that told the whole story wasn't the roast. It was the coffee. For 2 weeks, the same red Folgers can had been stretched a second time, sometimes a third, just to make it last. That morning, Grandma made a fresh pot, full strength, no stretching. Nobody said a word about it. We just watched her pour a cup and drink it slow, like she'd earned it. That was how we always knew the hard stretch was over. Not because anyone said so, because the coffee finally tasted like coffee again. That's the thing about a fresh pot of coffee, or a real Sunday roast. Nobody in that kitchen ever said, "The hard part's over." Nobody had to. You just felt it. The same way you felt it get harder a couple weeks before, without anyone explaining a thing. And if you want to know what happened the month Grandpa lost his job, because it started a lot like this one did, that's the video right there on your screen. That was Grandma's whole way of doing it. Never an announcement, never a speech about how tight things were, or how proud she was to get through it. Just another plate, put down the same steady way, whether it was pork chops or sugar sandwiches. We didn't understand what she was carrying back then. We just knew what dinner tasted like. If any of this brought something back for you, a dish, a smell, someone in your own life who did the same thing without ever saying so, You already know exactly what I mean.